Welcome to Talking Mopars episode number 114. This is part one of a two-part replay of the Facebook live stream that I recorded on Friday night. I had a few of my friends join me on the show, including my friends Tad, Ervin, Jonny Mopar, and the one and only Mike Coffey, the Mopar picker extraordinaire. It was fun as always, and I look forward to the next live. And now, you know the drill. If you are a Mopar enthusiast, then you are in the right place. Don't go anywhere. You're tuned into the best Mopar enthusiast-driven podcast on planet Earth, and I am your host, Chris Albrecht, better known as the Mopar Hunter, and this is Talking Mopars Live.
You're listening to Talking Mopars with the Mopar Hunter, your direct connection to all things Mopar.
Oh, it's good to be back. I've already got my buddy Tad in the chat. Let me get him in here. Tad, what's up, buddy?
Not much. How you doing, Chris?
Good, man. Let me just set this up here. There we go. Oh, it's been a while since I jumped on a live, and it's been a while since you've been on a live, man.
It's been probably a year.
Has it been? It feels like it's been a year.
Yeah. I think it was February. It had been February of this year, so almost a year.
Wow, that's crazy. You've been pretty busy, dude. Oh, we got Jonny Mopar in the chat. Let's bring the infamous Jonny Mopar is in the house. There he is. What's up, Jonny?
What's up, guys? Tad's here. I'm out of here.
What's up? I was just gonna say I need like a blue light or a red light in my bathroom so I can go sit there and look cool like you guys.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Jonny, thanks for joining us. Jonny was over on Ruben's show on YouTube.
Yes,
that kept me entertained on my way home. I was like, oh yeah, that's right, they're going live, so I thought I'd tune in.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Cool conversations with those guys.
Yeah. The biggest problem with going live is that everybody wants to go live and everybody's like trying to figure out what day. And it's like the best thing about going live is that it's recorded so you can watch it whenever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Actually, I did a premiere on YouTube and I was like, because I know Brian and Ruben always go lives like Friday, Saturdays, coordinated with them. I was like, well, if I go before him at 5:30, that'll get all the people on the East Coast the ability to get in, without it being too late. And then we could just kind of roll into his live. So I think it kind of worked out.
So I didn't get a chance to check out the premiere. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what a YouTube premiere is. What is that?
So you do a premiere. It's like, let's say I'm going to do a premiere. I can make a video, I can launch it, and then I can set a date that it's going to come out. So I launched it yesterday for today at exactly 5:30. And then what you do is as it comes on, the time you set, it'll turn on, you start watching the video. And if people join in, you could actually, make comments or respond to people that are putting comments in your video. So there's like an interaction going on during the premiere. So I know Blake at Bad Tree Productions does it all the time. I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't see any advantage to it, but I watched some other person talk about how they could be helpful because I don't know if you pay attention, I'm sure you do, but like on your analytics, you can see like how long people are in videos. So if you have like a 20-minute video, people start, bailing out of the video about halfway through, maybe 7 minutes or something like that. And you're like, which is always surprising to me that, people bounce out of them so quickly. But it was saying that with the premieres, if you're interacting with people and they're putting comments, they're gonna stay watching the video all the way through. And then that helps trigger the YouTube algorithms because it's like, okay, well, you have 15 people watching all the way through the video, so this must be a good video. And then it starts to push it more than like a regular video just watch whatever time, people happen to come across it or not. So
I just want to say I'm glad you guys are doing all this because I talked to Jonny for a while at his house one day and he was telling me about all this and I'm like, I thought you just turned your phone on and started talking, man. He's like, oh, there's all these and you do this. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's what I do, Tad.
I was like, holy equations and stuff, man. Just
yeah, it's kind of crazy, man. I think it's been about a year and a half I've been doing it. And when I go back to a year and a half ago, watch the videos, then to now, it's like then as I'm doing this stuff, like you think you're doing a pretty decent job, but what you realize is you learn a lot of stuff as you go, and you start to get your own flavor and your own, how would you call that? Like your own brand, and that kind of stuff starts to get more and more like formulated. So, and the stuff that early on took a lot of time and is really hard, it starts to get easy, and then you can put a little more on your plate, so it's like, especially with editing and stuff like that, you can, when I first started doing it, it was like the videos were pretty much just raw videos. And then it's like, oh, I could chop the video up and where I'm not talking, I could put it high speed and I could put music, it's like you just keep putting these layers of cakes on there as you get more and more comfortable, but it might sound intimidating right now, but you got to start somewhere. And if you're going to start, just start. And then, don't look at all the craziness down the road. Just keep it simple. And then as you go, you can put a little more on and a little more on, a little more on, and you'll just get better and better.
YouTube's definitely a science. YouTube is a science compared to Facebook. You just go live. And with my videos, my videos are so underproduced. It's not even funny.
But that's what's good about them.
Yeah, I guess.
You can't edit the lives, it is what it is.
No,
so
it is.
There's no editing, so you don't have to worry about taking time to do any kind of editing. You just got to set aside the time to do it and BS,
Yeah.
I love the YouTube creators because, guys like Johnny keep me entertained when I'm in the garbage truck. I can't watch the videos, but I can listen to them. Unfortunately, sometimes I have to turn them off because I'll find myself going, oh, what's he talking about? And then I'll stop the truck. And then I'll be like, oh, that was 5 minutes gone by. There goes that break. You know what I mean? So I have to be pretty careful with that. But the problem is I have so many friends that do YouTube videos that it's hard to keep track of them all and keep updated. And I find, especially with Johnny's just, he's so prolific. He's just cranking them out. And I'm like, damn it, Johnny. But,
well, you fit one in tonight right before this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that when you released the one?
Yeah. That was the premiere Mike Coffey's Hemi car.
Yeah.
So
what a car.
Cool.
God,
dude,
that guy, man.
When you watch the video, it's insane how clean this car is, man. I mean, it's taken apart. The motor and trans is out. The front suspension is out. And it's got a little surface rust, but he's polishing it. And it's like most of it's coming out. The interior in it looks freaking perfect. He said there's a couple of tears in the back seat, but I didn't even see them.
Wow.
It's a total time capsule, man. It is so freaking clean. And it's neat. It's neat seeing like these little niche things that they did with the Hemi cars. Like there's this, you'll see in the video, there's this bracket that they bolted on the inner fender well, and it looks homemade. It looks like some guy just made it up and it's like, oh, I'm going to mount this starter relay here. And, there's like a couple of electronic pieces on it. And Mike was saying, he's like, yeah, I thought it was like some homemade shit at first. And then I realized it's actually Hemi cars that had this to make they pull shit off the firewall to make more room for the Hemi. So they had to move the starter relay over to the fender well. So it's a pretty neat car. It's pretty awesome.
So how many of those did they make like that? Because if they were only throwing those in once in a while, it's like they were probably like, oh, let's drop this engine in here. Oh, let's just put this over here.
I don't know the actual numbers, but like Mike was saying, because the transmission is gone on that car, unfortunately. But he said that it's probably the most common Hemi car. He's like if it was like his RT, I think the RT was like what 1 in 100 and I think it was like 1 in 85 or some shit like that. One less than 100 cars.
Yeah.
But the Hemi car, out of all the Hemi cars, the 66 and 7s, I think especially the 66 is the most common because that was like the first production year, wasn't it? I think 66 was the first year they put them in production cars. So they probably pumped a bunch of them out initially, and then they probably waned off of them,
Yeah, 66 was the first year of the street Hemi. And what a lot of people forget is that out of all Hemi car production, only 10,904 Hemi cars were ever produced. You know what I mean? Imagine how many of those are gone, you know?
Yeah.
So every time a Hemi car is found, it's like, oh my God.
I heard somebody say that Chrysler built more aftermarket Hemi, you know, when they were doing the crate motors, they built and sold more later Hemis, you know, 426 Hemis than they did back in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, so, I believe it. And hey, somebody in the chat, go to Google and make sure my number's right. I think it's 10,904. I could be wrong, but
I heard that as well. I think that was on one of the podcasts you did with Mike, Johnny, or you guys were talking about something. Yeah.
Yeah, I just that number. I've done a lot of research on the Hemi stuff, and I couldn't believe it at first. I was like 10,000, you know, and when you think about it, like really between what 66 and what 71, that's really not that many, you know, that's crazy. How about that? How about that CUDA that he posted the fender tag on he's like, yeah, bonus points or whatever for anybody that can tell me what this is. And I was like, where is that E74? I was like, no way, dude. No way. Oh my God. Hemi shaker, 4-speed, super track pack car. Oh my God. Shaker. Like, it doesn't get much better than that, man. God.
Did he elaborate? Because I saw him post the fender tag, but I don't know if he was buying it or looking at it or.
I hit him up immediately, and I don't know how much he wants to divulge, but it's part of a giant horde, I guess, in Louisiana, and it looks like I don't know if somebody's going in and pulling out the collection and then trying to flip everything or what, but the guy has claimed $2 million worth of Mopar parts and cars, and just the Hemi car alone, you know, gosh, I would venture to say it's a 6-figure car, but like I saw pictures of it, and because I was like, you know, what kind of shape is it in? He sends me pictures, and I didn't know what to expect. And it is definitely a project car, but it is definitely a shaker CUDA. It's got the tag. I don't know what else it has, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that Mike's going to go for it because, you know, talk about 6 figures. It's like, you know, for basically a torn apart project car, just to get it back together was going to be a lot of money.
Yeah, I think being a project car is going to be a little bit harder. When I was talking to him, when we did the video, I was over there one day and I did a video on pretty much everything there. The RT, the Hemi, his van a little bit, his Duster, the drag car. And he's got a GTX, a 69 GTX sitting there. We talked about a little bit, but I wasn't trying to film. I just had the cameras going. So I don't know if I can use it, like if it'll be, you know, too far away and the volume won't be good or whatever. But in talking to him, he was talking about how he could have, you know, out of the horde that his RT came out of, or I shouldn't say horde, but out of the find that his RT came out of, he could have bought that 71 Hemi Challenger, and he was kind of saying that he kind of regrets not making the big move on that car. It was significantly more expensive than the RT.
Yeah,
but he was like, you know, looking back on it, he's like, I wish I just went all in, like, you know, pull money out of the house and sold everything off and like just made it happen. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, it's a pretty rare car. I think it's 1 of 58, or you know, I'm probably wrong on the number, but it was something like that, like really, really low number car.
That, and if you consider the fact that I believe it's completely numbers matching, you know, that is insane. And in original condition, gosh, the money on that was probably insane. I couldn't even imagine.
It was. I mean, I don't have the number, but the way he talked about it, it's like, damn, it was insane when you bought the RT. But you know, I'm sure that car was significantly higher. But so, you know, with that being said, if he's kind of thinking about that, you know, I don't know. He's got between the RT and the Hemi car, I don't know. He talked about the Hemi car being listed for $25,000. I don't know what he actually paid for it. I didn't ask him. But, you know, if it's close, say 20 to 25, and then, you know, I'm not going to divulge what he paid for the RT, but he's got a lot of money sitting in the driveway just because of cars. And it's like, man, if that shaker car is a significant chunk of cash, it's going to be, It'd be pretty hard. I think he was saying his wife even said something about selling the Hemi car, like, okay, you need to get that thing all cleaned up so you can sell it. You know, like you can't have a bunch of expensive cars laying in the driveway, like, you know, tying up a bunch of cash. So
yes, you can, Johnny.
Well, apparently Mike can, right?
I've talked to him on many occasions, and he's let me in on some of the stuff, and we have conversations every once in a while because I like to get in Coffey's head a little bit and see what he's up to, and it would have to be the right. Some of the offers he's been getting on that Coronet, I'm like, gosh, that would be so tempting for me.
Yeah.
But you know, because if I told him, I was like, dude, if you got rid of the 6-pack car, the Hemi car, you know, you're right in that territory of a fully restored, you know, A12, or depending on how much you could squeeze out of them, you might be in the wing car territory if you can find one, you know. Yeah. I know there's a white Superbird. It's a 440 Super Commando car. I believe it's got the pistol grip in it. It's white with black interior, and it's up I think it's on eBay for like $200,000. I'm like, God, that's a lot. But I don't know, man. If I was in his position, you know, it seems like I think he enjoys the flip. I think he lives for that. You know what I mean?
I think he does too. He's a picker and he's a flipper, whether he wants to admit it or not. He did say in the RT video that I did with him, he did say that he's like, if I let go of the RT, he's like, it's got to be for something, you know, worth letting go for. So he was talking about like AAR CUDA and a 6-pack car. I guess he's got a buddy that has one that might be for sale. So so it's I don't think he would just sell it and take the cash. It's like he would sell it and you know, keep it in that realm of you know, you said it's got to be a 4-speed, you know. So
I don't know, man. That Coronet is so cool. If I know at least one of the offers that he's gotten that he was considering, and I was thinking about it after I got done talking to him, and I was like, if I had that money, would I make that offer on that car? Because we had talks when he first got it, and what I thought it was worth, you know what I mean? And he's been getting offers over that. And I was like, gosh, you know, and the more when I saw the car in person, I was like, man, it doesn't get much cooler than that. Perfect patina on it. You know, he threw the top on it. It looks awesome. That car is awesome.
It does. When I was doing that video, I was going through some pictures so I could post on the video. And I asked Randy, because, you know, Randy's the guy that was involved with bringing the cars to California, right? And he was cool with it as long as I gave him credit for the pictures. And when you look at the RT sitting where it was sitting, you know, at Randy's place, it's like, man, it looks kind of beat down when you see the picture of the car versus how the car looks now. And it's like, it's perfect. He found hood scoops for it that still had green. That made a huge difference. It's like, because I'm looking at the picture and it's like, man, the whole top of the hood looks wiped out. But when you look at his car in real life with the painted hood scoops, and they're not painted, fresh painted, they're actual original paint, you know, from some other car. But it looks perfect, you know, and then putting the white top on it, I think really spruced it up. The car looks great, dude. I mean, you look at the condition of that car, it is in excellent condition.
Oh yeah. I would drive the shit out of that thing. Speaking of awesome B bodies, Tad, the Coronet is now running.
It is.
Why don't you go ahead and for the people that haven't heard the story about the car, kind of give them a background on the car and the trials and tribulation you've gone through recently, because I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, oh no, that's insane. But
it came close. I was like, so the backstory. I mean, I keep thinking about it, and I keep having the number 6 in my head because I think it's been 6 or 7 years now that I've had it. So it's funny because I had a couple other cars and I was working on my buddy one day. I'm talking to him and he's like, oh, I just bought this. He kind of flips cars. I bought this Camaro. He's like, what's your favorite car if you could have your dream car? And I'm like, I don't know, a Super B. Totally just like out of the loop. I'm like not thinking about buying one or anything. The next day he's like, dude, I found your car. And I'm like, what do you mean you found my car? He's like, check this out. And it's like on eBay. I think it's in North Carolina, is East Coast. And he's like, look, man, this is it. It's like numbers matching, complete car. Like it needs some rust work, but it looks, and he was a body guy and stuff. And he was like, we could totally do this. And it was on eBay and it was at like $5,000. So I was like, it had 2 weeks to go. So I'm like, I'll watch it for a couple of weeks and see what happens. So like 2 days before the auction ends, it's at like 8,000. So I'm like, I'll put 8,100. Dude, someone in the last 5 minutes is going to outbid me. I'm literally sitting there watching that thing, dude, and it clicks down to 0, and I'm like, oh my God. I just bought a car.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's like, I sold another, I had a 64 Land Cruiser that I had restored, and I sold that. And then I had to figure out shipping from the East Coast, and it was a lot getting it back. But it finally arrived. I have a video of them backing it into my driveway and stuff. And I mean, at that time I lived in a newer neighborhood, and I mean, it barely fit so the garage door would go down. Like the garage is 2-car garage, but I was like, oh my God, is the door gonna shut?
I know that pain all too well.
Yeah, right. So I mean, when it got there and I looked over it, I mean, literally, so the bottom 6 to 8 inches of the quarter panels were just cut off. I mean, there was no trunk floor in it. The lower edges, they were just totally cut off. I mean, the little filler panel in the back was like totally separated from the package tray. Like it was, it rusted all the way around the side. I mean, I literally cut the entire back of the car off and replaced everything. Now, luckily, the frame rails were all solid. Like that whole, so, I made one big order from, I think it was from Classic out here, and just this UPS truck showed up one day, and it was just like basically unloaded the back of a car out of their truck. And then, so yeah, I mean, I just, over about a year or so, I just, I'd never done this before. It was like my first time cutting a car apart like this, doing this intensive work.
Yeah.
But as I started kind of cutting things away, I'm like, oh, this is like a big puzzle. Cause like these new pieces, when the old ones are gone, the new ones fit right on. So so I just one by one, and, people are like, oh, you have to put crossbars in and supports and this and that, or it's going to twist. And I'm like, I'm doing one piece at a time. So it was like, I think it was like passenger quarter. I cut the tail panel out because the tail panel was completely gone. And when that was out, I slid the trunk floor in between the quarter panels. So I got that in one piece, and then just kind of worked my way around and clamped everything together with Cleco clips. I mean, the whole car was clamped together with clamps and Cleco clips.
God.
And then one of the arms on the trunk was rusted. The support was rusted out, so I couldn't even shut the trunk correctly. So I had to get that fixed and get the trunk to make sure it fit before I just started welding stuff together. But yeah, I did that, got that done, and then decided to paint it. I actually had to do something else. I had to do was the door pillars on both sides, front and back, were wasted. So I had the 2 back pillars where the door shut, I had to replace those completely. The front ones, it was just like the lower half, so I had to cut the lower halves out and like splice in repair panels that I got from AMD. So it was a ton of work, man. But I got that back together. I mean, I just learned along the way, like, I got to put body filler here and filler this, and not body filler, but the seam sealer, and sealed things up and put things together. And I mean, finally got it all kind of pasted back together again. And then ended up, the house I was in then had a two wide, like 2 deep garage. So it was a giant garage. So I taped off a big area for a paint booth and set up fans and everything. And I painted the whole thing, all the primer, all the paint and everything in my garage. How
many cars had you painted before that car?
So right before, knowing that I was going to paint the Super V, I had a 65 Dart, actually, that I bought from Chris Fields. It was
I remember you
him.
telling me about that. Yeah.
So I had bought that car, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to like scuff this car up and paint it and see what it's like to paint a car. So so I did. I scuffed it up. It was single stage though, right? So I didn't, at the time I knew the difference what they were, but not how they went on. So I scuffed that car up, pushed it in, painted it. And I mean, it came on all right. It was really orange peely and stuff, but I'm like, at least I got the feel of the gun and how to move and stuff. And I'm using literally like everything I used was from Harbor Freight. So like literally the $15 gun that you can buy, I got on sale for $7. So I bought 3 of them, So so I painted that car. It came out okay. I kind of learned a little bit of speed. I watched a lot of videos, and it was like, do this, go this speed, overlap 50%, listen. And like when I got in there and I realized air pressure and everything else, I'm like, you really got to. Somebody told me that I talked to at the paint store, they're like, lay it down exactly how you want it to look when it's dry. So I'm like, okay, because when I would do 50% coverage, I could look over it and see speckly parts in it. So I knew, okay, I need to put more paint down there. So when I got to the Super B, I did 2-stage. And when you lay down the color, it's like watered down like baby powder. I mean, it's super runny. It's not like the single. So I'm laying it on and it's thick and it goes on it. I did the engine compartment first and I laid it in and it was so thick that it like clumped up and like it looked like it was ripping.
Oh shit!
It just like all slid down basically the vertical walls, or the engine compartment. So I was like, crap. So I went back real quick and dabbed that, and I went back over it light, and it turned out okay. But so anyway, painted that. Ended up running out of paint, so I had to go back and buy another gallon. Well, they mixed the two same codes, but I painted the engine compartment and the inside of the car completely. And when I went back and started painting the outside with the new gallon, it's like, as soon as I popped the can, I'm like, this looks like green almost, like a little more green than the other one. As soon as I put it on, I could totally see that they totally screwed up the first batch of paint.
Oh, no.
So it didn't match the second batch.
Oh, man.
So then I had to go back, scuff up the engine compartment, paint all that again. But it wasn't a huge deal, but I had to go back and scuff it all up again. The inside of the car, I just left because I was going to be covered with everything, door panels and carpet and everything else. So yeah, I got that. I painted the fenders, doors, everything else separate. And so to answer your question, very first car that I really, really painted at this level. So I painted the main part of the car, and then I took the doors and fenders and everything, put them in. And when I put the fenders on and the doors, I'm like, for me, I could see the difference. There's a difference in the shade of yellow. Mm-hmm. And what I realized is painting the huge part, the main part of the car, I did 3 coats on everything, but it's a lot harder to tell how thick your coats are and how much you're putting on. But when I'm painting a door, I'm just going back and forth and I can see exactly what I'm doing and I got it coated really well. Yeah. So it's the same color yellow. It's just deeper because it's got more paint on it. So, I look at it and I'm like, I can see the difference and it kind of bums me out, but everyone's like, don't worry about it. No one's going to notice it. Like, because it's your car and this and that. And I'm like, I know, I don't even care anymore. I'm just driving. Yeah. So I did that. Everything on it was totally rebuilt. I did that. What they call like a nut and bolt restoration, everything. I tore everything out, rebuilt the front end, had the engine rebuilt. The engine I had rebuilt 7 years ago and it sat on a stand for 6 years, like totally done and rebuilt sitting there. Same thing with the transmission. So, it got all that stuff. It's funny when I put the engine and stuff in, I had it mounted to the K-frame. So I'm like in my garage, like, how am I going to get this thing in there? Because I don't want to take it off the K-frame. And there's a beam that ran across the top of the garage. And I'm like, I look up there and I'm like, I literally bolted 2 metal brackets on either side of it. And then put lag bolts in a big heavy piece of chain. And I used my come along. I hooked it on there and I went down and hooked the front of the car on the come along and I raised the front of the car up like it was doing a wheelie. And I slid the engine under it and lowered it down over top of the engine. So
you're crazy.
all by myself. So I got that in there, got it bolted in, and then it was just pieces going back on, having to get everything so I could actually roll the car, getting everything put back together. I'm kind of jumping way ahead, but I ended up moving out of that house and I had to get it rolling and movable. So I did that. I got the front back together, all the suspension hooked up, the rear end back in, all that stuff together. I got it on. So I brought it from Temecula, where I live, up to Canyon Lake, which is 25 minute drive on the freeway. But instead of putting it fully on a trailer, I put the front end up on a tow dolly and I just pulled the drive shaft out so it wouldn't turn the transmission. On the way from Temecula to Canyon Lake, though, I'm like, I'm going to run by the windshield place that I use for all my cars and have them put the windshield in it. So I don't know why I wasn't thinking, but I pulled into the windshield place, and it's a long, kind of narrow driveway to their garage, but there's no way out the other side.
Oh, shit.
So it's on a tow dolly.
Oh, shit.
So not only is it hinging at the truck, it's the tow dolly actually hinges on top of the frame.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to back this thing out, and it's bending in two places.
Oh, no.
And I mean, I finally got it out, but I actually turned it at one point, and it twisted so much that it hit up against these plastic bumpers on the tow dolly, and it like put a couple dents in the door on the bottom.
Oh,
I mean, the doors are on the inside. They look good on the outside, but the inside, they're really rusted and trashed. And I had to, again, with the doors bolt on, I had to cut all that out and replace all those supports and everything. So at some point I'll get new doors. So I'm not too bummed out, but at the time I was just like, I had just moved it. I just moved a U-Haul truck, and I'm trying to get this car, and I'm like, I don't even care. I just want to get to the house. So they ended up putting the windshield in. And then I literally got it up here. So what happened with the engine was when I had it built, the guy was like, oh, I'll put these roller rockers in it. It's hydraulic lifters. I'll put these, I think they're PRW or PWR roller rockers in it. And I didn't know anything about, I just like, well, how's that going to help me? Like, oh, it'll give you like 20 horsepower. So I'm like, okay, let's do it. Sounds cool, So I put all this stuff in. Well, I went through and adjusted all the valves exactly how I had like watched videos, read stuff about how to set the preload and all that kind of stuff. So I get that all done. I'm ready to start it, and I'm just, I was super nervous. So I text Chris Field, and I was like, man, I'm ready to do this. Like, I'm kind of nervous. Like, do you have any advice? And he was like, listen, because he came out to my house one day, he and his body guy, just to kind of look at it before I painted it, because I was going to have them do kind of the rest of that. And he's like, listen, I've seen the car. I've seen everything you've done. And he's like, honestly, you've done more on a car than I've ever done. Like, I've never done a complete car like that. So he's like, I'm confident you know what you're doing. Like, you're going to be fine. Just run through things, make sure it's okay. Things are looking right. And then just do it. You'll be fine, And so I did. I started it up, got timing set and stuff. And it was like halfway through breaking it in. I mean, I'm at like 2000 RPM. Everything's going okay. It sounds a little clattery, and all of a sudden I get this like popping noise. It's like pop, 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 pop. And I'm like, oh crap. And I'm like listening. Well, actually, let me back up. Prior to that, I start getting this high pitched whine, like a bearing going out. And I was like, oh crap. And then I'm like, oh, I forgot to fill the power steering pump with fluid. So I turned it off real quick, and I just cut the belt to the power steering pump. And then I started it back up. It just started back up fine and was running. And then it started making that popping noise. And I'm like, oh, okay, what does that sound like? It sounds like it's coming out of the carburetor. Like, doesn't sound like a rod or something like that. So I finished breaking it in, and then kind of went back and asked a few people what they thought. And they're like, oh, you wiped your cam out. Like, that's what it sounds like. Everybody was kind of like the worst case scenario. So I'm like,
yeah, I
just pull the valve covers off and see what I can find. And I popped off the driver's side, and basically cylinders 3 and 5, the push rods had come completely out from under the rockers. And then I think it was one of the other, I think the intake on number 5, the push rod was like the shape of a Z. I mean, it had popped out and like rammed up against in there and just totally bent it into like 3 different shapes.
Jesus.
And then the exhaust on the number 3, I looked in and I'm like, I don't even see the push rod. Like, where'd it go? And I took a magnet and stuck it in there, and it was in 2 pieces. Like, it had completely broken in half and fallen in there. So I'm like, oh. So I pulled those out, pulled the lifters out of there, and I pulled the lifters out, and they were perfectly smooth on the bottom. There was no damage to them or anything. I looked at the cam was fine. So I think I dodged a huge bullet there. I think they fell out and got out of the way soon enough that those 2 cylinders just weren't working basically the last 10 minutes of the break-in. So that's when I kind of did some more research, realized that people are like, don't use the roller stuff, just go back to stock. So that's when I called Johnny, because when I was moving, I had called him and said, hey, I got a bunch of stuff. Do you want all these things, like a bunch of random parts? And I'd given him a bunch of rockers and rocker arms. So I went by his place, and
In a baking pan.
Yeah. It was a Teflon baking pan. but I mean, even he and I sitting there looking at him, because we were looking at him for a while. I'm like, why does this one look different? This rocker feel, and we realized there were kind of a mixture of small and big block stuff in there. So I just brought the whole pan home. So got a complete set, and then put those. I dropped the lifters back in. I think I had to buy one new lifter because one of the buttons had popped out of the top of one of them. Well, I put it back in, but I could see where the push rod had mashed the edge of it, so it wouldn't operate anymore. It wouldn't slide in and out anymore. So I had to replace that lifter. So I put those all back in, bolted all back together, kind of checked timing a little bit and stuff. I mean, I fired it up and it was like, I mean, I sent you the video, but I fired it up and it was like, thank God. I mean, it like was purring, man. And I'm like, dude, I couldn't believe it. So I got our timing set, got everything set up to the RPM and everything. And I just let it run and break in. And I brought it back down, at the end of breaking in, I brought it back down, set the idle and stuff. And it was running awesome. And there's a couple things I still have to look at. One of them is when I have it in park, and I don't have the kickdown linkage and stuff in yet, but when I put it in park and go to start it, it just clicks. It won't start. But if I put it in neutral, then it'll turn over and start. I think there's something not lined up right with the transmission to allow that, because isn't there like there's like a parking switch on the transmission, I think, that it has to be
neutral safety switch.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's,
if you got slop, sometimes you got slop in your shifter and stuff, and the arm may not be going all the way to the end where it's in park.
Okay.
So your transmission's the lever is not going into park.
Okay.
You could probably crawl under the car and just push it with your hand, and it'll go into park, and then it might start. But just follow all the linkage and find out where the slop is. There's adjustability in some of that stuff too. I mean, I can't tell you exactly on the top of my head, but and I think the later ones, even that one, there's like these plastic bushings. You know that arm that comes off the transmission?
Yep.
There's a plastic bushing in there. If they get loose when they're old and original, they make them new, so you can pop a new one in there, and it'll help tighten everything up when you're putting the car in and out of gear and stuff. So
okay, I have to
all that.
Yeah, I have to check that. It has an MSD, like what do they call it? It's one of the MSD ignitions where it's just like a drop in and go. It has everything built into it. So I think I have to work on some timing because it ran perfect. Everything got broken in. I shut it off. I went back out a couple days later to start it, and it was just having trouble firing and starting up. So I think there's some adjustment in the timing. I just to break it in, I didn't put gas in the tank. It has a brand new tank and stuff, but I just used a gas can, and I think it sucked enough gas out that it's not picking enough up anymore to feed the carburetor. So it's just having a little trouble starting again. The one thing I forgot to mention is, and I sent you this video too, is when we were initially trying to start it, I had my son in the car. So he's turning it over as I'm out working the carburetor, right? Well, that's after I got everything set at the old house, moved it out here. While we're trying to start it, and it wouldn't fire. And he turns it over one time, and it exploded so loud. I have the muffler on my coffee table.
God.
It, like literally brand new turbo muffler, like split open like a tin can. I mean, it exploded. And like you could see the sound wave in the video, but he was sitting in the car like right on top of it, it exploded, and he was like, "What was that?" I'm like, "I'm not really sure. Let me look under." This lady came down from behind where my parking thing is. She comes down. This little old lady comes out, and she's like, "What was that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's okay. I was just breaking my car." And she's like, "Sounds like someone threw something at my house." So
she's like, "Broke it." Yeah, you sure did. Oh man.
Yeah. So luckily that muffler everything was brand new. So I just slipped it off, got a new one, and everything slid back on and got that repaired. But so yeah, now it's I got to get the brakes adjusted a little bit. I had bled them out, but they softened up again, so I got to figure out what that's about. And then just door glass, I got to put the back windows in. A lot of just small mechanical stuff like that. And it should be close.
Man, gosh, how many oh shit moments have you had with that thing?
Dude, I can't even tell you, man. I mean, there were times in my garage when I was doing the metal work that I was just like, it's kind of like Johnny mentioned earlier about making the videos. It's like you have to look at what's right in front of you, because if you try to look at the whole road ahead of you, man, it's like, okay, I have this car for sale. Who wants to buy it? It's a project. You can't look at it all. And when I look back at it now and I think about the hours that I sat in there grinding and cutting and welding, and I'm just like, I don't ever want to do that again.
Yeah. How much welding experience did you have before you took on that project?
I bought the welder to do the project. So literally none. I mean, I literally bought the welder. I had a bunch of scrap metal and stuff, and I watched a lot of videos, but I've always been good. Like when I like woodworking, building stuff, I've always been good working with my hands. So it's like, I knew if I just got the feel of it, so I watched some videos, I put some metal together, and I just started welding. And like, again, they say, oh, weld, hold it and move at this speed. And it's like, I think that works if you have a perfect welder, but again, a Harbor Freight welder.
God.
So it was like $100.
Flex core?
What's that?
You did it with a flex core?
Flux core, yeah. Flux core, Harbor Freight, like $100 welder. So
when Tad takes that car to car shows and people hear the story, they're gonna think he's fucking insane.
True. Well,
My God.
Honestly, I wouldn't know any better because, again, it's the first. I mean, I've mechanically fixed other old cars, but I've never done this. So it was like all learning. It was a learning curve, like walking up a wall, So, yeah, I didn't have. I took the metal, like I learned. Okay, I can keep it there this long, and how it kind of the metal reacts to it and stuff, and I just got used to my welder also. Like you get, it's they're all different. So, and then literally to do a lot of the spot welding, I bought, again, like online, I bought like $120 like big like spot welder that I could clip under the parts that I could get to, like where the wheel tubs and the outer quarter panels come together. I spot welded all those with a big just handheld spot welder. Everything I could reach with that, I do. So
you're probably making my buddy Paul in the chat is a welder, like a professional welder. So he's probably sitting there like, oh my God.
Well, he would probably look at it and be like, oh, that is the ugliest welder.
But if anybody's listening and thinking about the Harbor Freight Flux Core welder is the trap, because it's like, I mean, I don't know what they're going for now, but they were about $150, right? So you think, hey, that's a pretty decent investment, because if you get a nice one like a Lincoln or a Miller, that the wire feed or MIG, I should say, they're probably about $500 or $600 by the time you get all the little shit you need for it. So you think, oh, buy the Flux Core, shittiest freaking welds ever. I mean, you can make it work, but shit, you end up grinding a lot of the shit you weld on. It just takes so much time. It was a waste of money. Like those things, if you're watching this and thinking about it, don't buy it. Just save your money, get yourself a MIG welder, a little Lincoln or a Miller, and you'll be light years ahead.
So that's the thing. That's a good thought, because like that's the way my brain works, is like, oh, I can get this one for less. But in the long run, it's like, how much money did I spend in grinding discs and cutting, and like, you know what I mean? It's like in the end it evens out, but up front it's like, oh, $100 versus $400. And honestly, again, like with the whole build, it's like not knowing the difference. I'm like, oh, welder, cool. So
I can't tell you how many times I've gone into Harbor Freight and saw that fucking thing for $79 and been like, maybe I'll just buy it and have some fun. And then I remember Johnny and I had this conversation once, and he was like, don't do it. Don't do it.
Well, one thing I learned is the wire that comes with it is like junk. I mean, I would just throw it in the trash. I went and bought better wire, like Lincoln wire and stuff. And like, even
and
that
the welder that comes with the wire is also junk. So
yeah. Well, I'm done with that. Now it's just small project stuff.
I'm gonna send Johnny over there to take a look at this car, Tad, and make sure it's safe to drive.
It like I said, it's the thing is, like on sheet metal, there were times, because honestly on the welder too, it's like high and low. So it's like you're you're either getting enough to have to keep it on there a while. If you put it on high, you're just blowing through the sheet metal. So that's what I had to learn too, is like, okay, I got to figure out, even distance and all that kind of stuff. And I learned the welder, and it worked. And I mean, I'm honestly, I'm really confident that the welds are not going to break or anything because they're on there. But it just took. It's not as easy as just getting one, like Johnny's saying, a good one, and like right out of the chute being able to weld halfway decent.
When you go from a flux core, like because I know, because I did it. I know the trap. I've walked into the trap before myself. And it's like, okay, that $150 or $100 or $70, whatever it was, I paid for it. It was throwing money in the trash can, because that money could have went towards the nicer welder, which is what you end up doing. If you have a low threshold of pain, you end up going to the nicer welder, and then when you do go to the nice MIG, it's just like, oh my God, it's like butter. Once you get it dialed in right, it's just butter. You sit there and just, I mean, the flux core, it's like it just builds up, and then it's like, you got these bubblegum welds on there, and you got to sit there and grind it off and then hit it again. And you waste tons and tons of time. And like you said, discs and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll never.
I actually think, as much as we joke and stuff, Tad, one thing that I can say is that you'll be at these shows, you know what I mean? And chances are you put more time in your car, and that car better than most of those people probably know their own. You know what I mean? Hey, you've been in the trenches.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, like with I mean, so I started in old cars with like air-cooled Volkswagens, and like I could drive down the road and I could hear something and be like, oh, I know what that is. Like I just knew my car. I always worked on it. And that's kind of like with this one. If I hear something, I'm going to know, like, oh, I know what that is. So I don't know. Yeah. I think I sent you a whole message about the difference between buying a car done and building one. So
I can't wait to see the emails I get from this one. Like, hey, go look at that car that Tad built.
Someone go inspect that thing.
I imagine that you did a good job. It just took you a long, long time.
Well, and the thing is too, it's like, I mean, at that house, I mean, I had 6 kids running around, and I was married at the time and stuff. And so I'm working on it again. I'm talking 6 years, but I'm talking like one day every couple of weeks that I can go in there and work on it. You know what I mean? And then you get those periods of time where you get a bunch of time to work on it. And like that's how it is now. It's like, I just need to jump on it and do it. But between that and the Demon, it's like, I've been focusing on the Demon. So I just need to, like, once I focus on the Super B, it would get done quicker, but still kids running around and this and that. So it's like,
let's talk about that Demon, dude. God, I love that car. That's another car that has perfect patina on it. God, it looks good.
I think so the guy that I bought it from, totally randomly met him one day at an O'Reilly's. I had the Ram Charger, and I went in and I'm paying for something. And this guy's like, hey, whose car is that out there? And a Ram Charger. And I'm like, oh, it's mine. So we started talking, and he's like, yeah, I live up in Anza. I have these cars at my house. I have a 68 Roadrunner and a 71 340 Duster and the Demon and a Little Red Express. I'm like, are any of them for sale? And he's like, no. He's like, I don't think so right now. So I'm like, well, can I just come look at them? Like, I just want to see these cars, So I went up one day and looked at them, and I just told him, like, if you ever want to sell any of those cars, let me know. And he's like, okay. So, I mean, time goes by, and then one day I get a text, and he's like, how do you say it? Something about, I think I finally talked myself into selling one or something like that. So I'm like, oh, so the Demon basically. And he's had these cars, up in Anza, like, high desert kind of environment. But I mean, the Demon was like 6 to 8 inches in the sand. It was like the wheels were just in the sand. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, okay. And we just decided, I mean, we decided on a price, and I don't care about sharing that with you guys. He's like, I'll sell it to you for $6,000. With it at the time, it had a 340 in it, the 340 that's numbers matching to his Duster. So he's like, I'll sell it to you for 6,000 without the engine. And I'm like, okay. So he pulls it into his garage one day, and he calls me up, and he's like, you think you want this engine? And I'm like, he's like, I don't feel like pulling out right now. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, how much do you want to, like, how much more are you thinking? Like $500? Do I have a kid behind me? Oh, it's my daughter.
Hi.
So we talk about it for a while, and I'm like, well, do this. Like, because he's like, I don't know if that came out of the duster or not. And I'm like, you need to check the numbers because I don't want to take your numbers matching engine for your 340 duster.
Yeah.
So he ends up checking it out, and it's the numbers matching engine. So,
oh, man.
so we lift it and take it out. So anyway, I get the car. He's had it for like 15, 20 years. And I've gotten some history on it. His friend that he grew up with here in around Escondido, Temecula area. I mean, they grew up, went to high school together, and they had that car. And I guess it came out of Escondido. That's where it originated from. I don't know where it was originally bought or anything. Hang on a second. Come on.
That's all good.
So they bought it, they raced it, they hammered it for a while. It changed hands a number of times. I think at one point he said somebody put an automatic transmission in it and drag raced it with an automatic transmission, and then they got it back and they pulled that out and they welded the hump back in. And I mean, when I first got it, the lower radiator support was totally cut out. They had welded some brackets in it to put a tow bar on it. And instead of doing it right, they just cut the bottom of the radiator support out. So I replaced all that. But it changed hands a lot. And then it ended up and his friend John moved and had these cars and had to put them somewhere. So they just parked them at his house in Anza. And that's where it just sat in the dirt forever.
Wow. And now you got an engine in it and it's running now?
So yeah, when I initially was looking for an engine, after he said he wanted to keep his, I'm like, I just need to find an engine. And I couldn't find a 340 online. I found a guy that had a 360 out of a 98 Dakota RT. And I bought that for $1,000. He had just rebuilt the whole thing, knew everything. and then again, Chris Fields reached out and was like, hey, I have this buddy who might have an engine for you. So I called that guy. He got back with me, and he ended up had just built this 340 stock. I think it's a 70 block with the heads with bigger valves, like all the stuff on it. And it was a complete engine from pan to carburetor all the way up. So I bought that from him. We dropped it in. Still had the 4-speed transmission stuff. We got all that hooked up. And it took a little while. We tried to get it started, and it was kind of rough. His friend John came out, and this guy puts his hands on it, and it purred. Like he just he had all these little, like, I bought a new distributor and stuff for it, and he's like, he just took the distributor and turned the rotor, and he's like, it's not good. He's like, take that all apart. So we took the whole thing apart. He's like, the 2 springs in the bottom. He's like, pull this spring out and throw it away. He's like, now give me your flathead. He sticks the flathead in the other spring and twists it and opens it up in like 3 spots. And he's like, now you're good. So we put it back together. He's like, now when you start it, it's going to, those weights are going to open up right away and it's going to start right up. And I put it back together. And it's just like, starts like butter. It's just running perfect. So, he helped us get it really tuned in and get the timing set and everything. And now, it's running now. It's so funny though, because we ran it, we broke it in. I've driven it around their yard, his house a few times, but it's got power brakes and it's missing the little check valve. The brakes are just hard. So I'm just going to put a manual master cylinder back in it because I think that's what it had initially. But it's funny because we'd go to start it starts fine, and now when I go to start it, it turns over, but it fires when I let off the ignition. So somebody was saying that probably the ballast resistor is messed up or burnt out or something happened with that.
Could I'm not really.
My old blue truck was doing stuff like that, and I put a new ignition switch in it. It went away, and then it started to die if I let go of the key, but if I held it on, but not on long enough to mess with the starter. If I got it to crank and then just backed off a little bit, it would stay running. I let go and it shuts off. Put a ballast resistor in it, and then it just started doing wacky shit. That's why the blue truck got a wiring harness, because I was like, all right, I'm done messing with this thing. So I put another new ignition switch in it. I put a new ballast resistor in it, and then I did a wiring harness, and I was like, I better not have any more problems with this thing.
Did it work then?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I did pull the other dash harness out because it was all chopped up and stuff. I pulled it out and sent it to a guy in Wisconsin, and he totally rebuilt it, put a new block on it too, on the firewall and stuff. So I haven't gotten that back in yet, but I'm hoping to sorry, I'm hoping to get that stuff in, and then hopefully get it, figured out. But I think the coolest part of the car, and I was kind of sending you some numbers, Chris, is, it's 340 4-speed Demon, and it's that GA4, light gunmetal metallic, and when that color alone, from what I've read, I think there were roughly like 40,000 Demons built darts built. I can't remember the right way. If it's 40,000 darts built in 72 and 8,700 were Demons or Demon 340s, maybe. I don't remember the exact number. I think 8,700 were Demon 340s. I found a number recently, and somebody said it was from the Galen information that like 1,667 of them, of those were 3 or 4 speeds. So 340 4-speed Demons, 1,667. I can't figure out how many are the GA4 color. I do know that in general, I saw a number somewhere that said 2% of all the Demons built in 72 were the GA4, which brings it down to like 800. I think it was. Oh, I'm sorry, 8,700. 2%. It's like 165.
I've never seen a GA4 Demon. I believe I've seen GA4 Dusters. Yes. I've never seen a GA4 Demon,
right?
Which is, I mean, yours is really cool. I like it.
So it's awesome. So I'm trying to find out if there's 160 that's the 2% of the total number made. How many of those were 340 4-speed? You know what I mean? It's like, it's got to be one of, I don't know. I mean, one of a handful of cars that were that color.
Yeah,
that's crazy, man. Really quick. My buddy Phil Painter was in the chat, and he said, Hemis, we will have your Hemis in Las Vegas. What he's talking about is Muscle Cars at the Strip, March 18th through the 20th. It's the 20th anniversary, and they're going balls to the wall with this one. So it's supposed to be a huge Mo party, basically, with obviously other muscle cars and stuff. But I had a blast at Matt's last year, or this year, I guess. Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to March. Yeah. Johnny, are you going to try to go again in March or what?
Yeah, I think it's going to be cooler. I think March is going to be funner than later in the year. But yeah, it'd be cool. I don't know. I might take the D100 or something. I really want to have something there where just putting around. If anything else, like we kind of did. We slapped GoPros on. Yeah, we only did it for a few minutes, but and didn't use any of the footage. But it'd be kind of cool to put all cameras and stuff on the truck and then just go around
and I won't have to rent a car. We can just cruise around in the tin grill. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
I need Phil, if you are listening to this, dude, Johnny and I need a golf cart. Put us on a reservation list or something. I'll pay for it. We need a golf cart next time.
Slap a Talking Mopar sticker on it.
Yeah. There you have it, my friends. Another episode of Talking Mopars is in the books. For everything you need to know about the show, you know where to go, talkingmopars.com. And you can reach me by emailing chris@talkingmopars.com or by leaving me a voicemail on my voicemail box at 209-28-MOPAR, and you just might get to hear yourself on the show. That's it, my friends. Until we talk again, I am your host, Chris Albrecht, and that was Talking Mopars Live.
Thank you for listening to Talking Mopars, your direct connection to all things Mopar. Until next time, remember, no Mopar left behind.